Hey everybody, really important show for you here today. I want to talk about executive athletes and people who are really, as we call it, burning the candle at both ends and ending up in a really dire situation by the time they reach their mid-50s to at the latest mid-60s. And I don't want this to happen to you. So many years ago, I was in my, call it mid-20s. I had just stopped working for this prestigious health club in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was on my own working with clients, mainly training them in their homes and high-end condo facilities, etc., working on nutrition. I worked with movie directors when they came to Boston. I worked with actresses, athletes, Patriots players, golfers, you name it, and it was a lot of fun. And I loved doing it, loved working with them as a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, nutritionist, etc. But I had an unfortunate run-in when I was at a coffee shop. And it wasn't unfortunate, I should say. It's probably the wrong choice of words. But I met with a former client of mine who was at this prestigious health club. There's about probably 3,000 members there. This is back in the early 2000s. And they were paying hundreds of dollars a month, when nobody was paying hundreds of dollars a month, by the way, for a health club membership. This health club was carpeted. I mean, it was beautiful, beautiful. I mean, exquisite. To this day, it's still really nice. But again, 20 plus years later now, people have caught up. I started working there. Yeah, it was early 2000, and clubs have caught up. And now people do charge, like an Equinox charges a couple $100s a month. But back then it was unheard of. And again, beautiful club, really great people, super nice. That's why when I started to work around people who were, quite wealthy in terms of money to be able to pay that for a membership and then pay for personal trainers as well. I'd always heard like, oh, people with money are bad or evil or whatever. And that's not obviously what today's show is about, but like, I don't know. I found that to be really one of the furthest things from the truth for the people that I met with. They were stressed, many of them, not all of them, but many of them were stressed. And that's part of, the story I want to share with you here today. But they were good people. They really were. And I don't want to give away their true names, so we'll just call them Linda and Michael. And Linda was a client of mine. She was an amazing woman. She had 3 kids. She was taking care of the kids all the time, running around. They were going to charity events, doing all these great things. And Michael worked in finance and long days, seemed to have endless energy, thin, ran, cycled, played, what was the big thing back then? Racquetball, like all sorts of different things. And it was a great guy. Every time I saw him, again, like I wasn't specifically training him, but he would shake my hand. He'd be smiling. It was like, always what I know now is, high strung, like really always in it to win it. And, but a great guy. And so years had gone by, but I remember my clients. I think they were great people. And so I saw her in a coffee shop in Boston and I said, hey, Linda, how's it going? It's great to see you. How are the kids? And she was like, great. They're going to this. And I said, oh, and how's Michael doing? And, her mood just immediately changed. And she said, Michael passed away about a year ago. And this guy was in his mid-50s. And I go, and she saw me and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, that is awful. And I'm in my, I don't even know, younger 20s. And I had no idea how to react. I had no idea this guy was in his mid-50s. I was like, people in their mid-50s die? It didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't even comprehend it because he was a healthy guy. He was, I don't know if he ran the business or what, but like he was a well-to-do individual in a big finance-based firm. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. How did it happen? Because I didn't even know if that was appropriate to ask, but I'm just like, what do I even say? And she said he had a heart attack. And I said, oh, that's just so awful. And I didn't want to pry or ask anymore after that. And just said, if there's anything, of course, I can do, please always just, let me know if I can, be of any help in terms of health or fitness or, whatever it is. Because obviously I want her to be healthy, for her family and her kids and all that. And so, after that, it definitely stuck with me, but I didn't understand how someone in their mid-50s who was fit, lean, and had the finances to be able to do all the different things and take care of them could suddenly drop dead of a heart attack in their mid-50s. And what I wanted to share with you now that I'm, 20 something plus years older is that, and in having gone through all the different functional medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathic medicine, et cetera, is understanding that our body is a living organism that can be overtaxed and overdone. And I see this just far too often, that there's a big difference between what people are trying to strive for because what they see online and actually how things work in the real world. And that's why I love more behind the scenes of athletes, because a lot of executive athletes, and I find myself always trying to move in that direction, but have to reel myself back, that they want to continue to do more, push more, compete more, and, really just push hard in life. And I get it. And I'm wired that way. So I understand it. But the difference is this, and I learned this from working with a lot of elite athletes, and I've worked with Olympic athletes, and I've seen their schedules. So let's just look at an Olympic athlete's schedule. They sleep a solid 10 hours a night. Most of them really do sleep. Now, they might go to bed at 10, 11, 12, like midnight, but they're sleeping until 9, 10 in the morning, easily, right? Not all of them. I understand swimmers are waking up early, they're in the pool, but then they go to bed early. And a lot of people don't know this, but they're taking 1 hour, 2 hour naps most days as well. I've worked with UFC athletes. They take naps during the day. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's how you recover. That is how the human body recovers, right? And then also, a lot of their meals are pre-done for them. They're eating 4, 5, 6 meals per day. They're fueling their body. They're actually not doing long intermittent fasts, like a lot of the executive athletes that I'm talking about are. And their day really revolves around, their job is training, but their other job, which is more than their job of training and exercise, is recovery. So the best athletes that I've seen, like the most hardcore, train 4 hours a day, maybe 5, but more like 4. Yeah, probably more like 4. Now they might be watching tape and they might be doing other thing for another 3, 4 hours a day, but actually physically moving, yeah, maybe 4 hours a day. That's probably what I've seen. Okay, so think about that. If they're up for 12 to 16 hours, because they sleep a lot to recover, because the naps count as sleeping too. When you look at that, they are, let's just say it's 12, let's just say it's 16 hours. Let's say they're not only sleeping that. So let's go with they're up 14 hours. Okay. So in that time, only, two-thirds of that is recovery. That's literally their day. Okay. So think about that. Now let's look at the executive athlete. They're up at 4:30 a.m. so that they can get in the run, the swim, the bike, the weight training, whatever it might be. And some people are doing 2 a day now, right? They're doing a run in the morning and then they're doing weight training after work. And then they get into work and, they didn't have time maybe for breakfast in the morning, or, maybe they're on a just protein shake only, or they're just fueled on coffee. And then they're working intensely for 10, 12 hours a day. And then there might be that workout again at the end of the day, or there might be a nightcap at night, or, they're back, they're with their family for a few hours and then they're back on work and they're getting 5 hours, 6 hours, maybe 7 if they're lucky. So they're working out an hour a day. They're intense with their work for 10, 12 hours a day. And you have to understand is if someone's dedicated as an athlete training each day, their focus is on recovery. And the executive athlete is really just focused on more. Where the Olympic athlete, the professional athlete, knows that more is not better, more equals burnout and the end of their career. And that is what I think we need to be talking about more as practitioners and everyday people. That just because you do a cold plunge for 3 minutes doesn't mean that you recover from 10 hours of work and an hour, hour and a half of a hard workout, especially if you're fasting for 16 hours a day and you're low carb, right? So let's talk about this a little bit more, because it really can. You have to understand is that 50% of people who have a heart attack never wake back up. And the first sign of that heart attack is literally the heart attack itself. So there was no prior sign. One is because they didn't necessarily run any of their lab work. That's the thing. Or they ignored their lipid profile because their, I'm going to put this in air quotes, functional nutritionist or whoever it might be told them that cholesterol doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, in some people it may not, but in others it does. And that's why it can't be the only number that you look at. But if you see LDL cholesterol of 180 or 200, you're like, whoa, there's probably a oxidation issue going on here. We should maybe look into this, right? We should look into this deeper. It shouldn't just be like, oh, no big deal, right? It should be, let's investigate. And also, they're not running their cortisol levels. They don't know their sleep-based metrics, right? They're just pinning that needle all the way on the RPMs that's in red. And a lot of people don't realize that every time you're training hard, you're raising inflammatory markers in terms of interleukin 6, right, which is an inflammatory cytokine. You're increasing cortisol levels. You're pushing your own adrenaline or norepinephrine, your catecholamines, right? So all of these things do matter. And when you're low carb, you only further fuel those because it does not help to lower interleukin 6 or TNF alpha, which is just, again, some of these more stress-based markers. So think about it. Low carb, lots of work, little sleep, hard workouts. It is a recipe for disaster, especially for men. And so that's why this is a public service announcement for mostly men, but women as well. But this is important that we all understand this information, is that you can only push the heart and the body so hard before it does collapse. And I just don't want that to sneak up on anybody. I don't want it for anybody. So what can we do? Well, the goal is that we run our blood work at least once a year, maybe even twice a year. But blood work is not the end-all be-all. When you start to look at the stress-mediated metabolism and you understand thyroid to a deeper level, your vitamin D levels, all that is great. You understand your gut health. You look at your omega-6s to your omega-3s, heavy metals, mineral levels, vitamin levels. That's the big five. You want to understand that, right? That's important. If your lipid panel, your cholesterol is off, well, I did a whole podcast, which I'll link up here today at episode 3469 is today's show. So you can just find that at stephencabral.com/3469. We'll link up the advanced cholesterol panel. Again, if you have elevated LDL, you want to look at this. You want to look deeper. It is a big deal in certain individuals. Catch it early. You'll be able to fix that without a doubt. So we'll give you that advanced cholesterol panel that you can look at, but then also track your sleep-based metrics. Very simple, and use whatever device you like. You can use the Apple Watch. You can use the Whoop strap. You can use the Oura Ring. I use the Oura Ring because it's the least to no EMFs. And it's just a ring, and so it's not a watch to wear. And it's, in my opinion, the best. It's not the most accurate for HRV, but it's your baseline, right? So like it's going to be lower than the other ones, but it's going to give you a really accurate reading at a baseline. So even though it would be higher on a chest strap, it's still very accurate for overall sleep. And it's the most important one, because if you're training hard and you're working hard, good for you. But now make sure that you're getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And if you say, I can't get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, well, then you just want to be careful because you're not keeping the body balanced. And health isn't about doing one thing, it's about balance. And doing more does not mean more recovery, right? So if you're working out hard and you're working hard, and then you're doing more sauna and more cold plunge, that is not necessarily recovery, that is more, right? You would be better served resting, taking a 30-minute nap, doing whatever. And you know I'm a huge proponent of sauna, right? But more is more sometime, right? I've talked about one of the amazing things that I learned as I was going through my doctorate degree in naturopathy is that when I started to do my internships, I realized that a lot of healing is not an additive process, but a subtractive. And I wrote about that in the rain barrel effect, right? You need to empty the rain barrel. It is not always more. It is about doing less. And when you're sleeping, you're doing less. So oftentimes we need to prioritize sleep. So today, I wanted to share that with you. This actually came up in our high performance health group. If you want to learn more about anti-aging, longevity, adding another 20 healthy years to your life, you can head on over to highperformancehealth.org. See if it's right for you or not, that's okay. But it's understanding your body, but more than anything, understanding that your body is about balance. That's all that it's about. So you can go hard if you are recovering properly every single day. If you go hard, you can do that in your early years, call it 20s and most of your 30s. And the reason is that you have strong vital reserves, as long as you didn't end up, sick as a teenager like I did. You're able to buffer stress to a greater degree. But as you start to move into your 40s and certainly 50s, and certainly for men, and you're creating more reactive oxygen species, more free radical damage, more inflammation, it begins to compound. And that can do very dangerous things inside of the body. And I want to make sure it doesn't happen to you or a loved one. So if you feel like this show could help anybody, please do feel free to share it with them at stephencabral.com/3469. Have an amazing day, everybody. I appreciate you. And I'll talk with you tomorrow on a brand new Cabral Concept. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.